10 vote earners for Dr. Stein and Ware were Harris, Collin, Dallas, Fort Bend, Tarrant, Travis, Bear, Denton, Williamson, and El Paso. And only about five of those have affiliated groups. Um, there's one group, North Dallas, Collin County, that has two of those, but it's not dedicated to those. And so, yeah, imagine what we can do with more affiliated groups that are regularly doing stuff and being active in their communities.
There are two things when it comes to running for office in 2026. The first is internally, right? So if anybody here wants to help with recruitment, we need to do that now. And so in order to bring in folks and to recruit them as candidates, or for those of us who want to run in 2026, that really needs to start now internally. And obviously, we want to recruit good candidates, strong candidates, folks who are going to, stay on the messaging, of the Greens, like 10 key values, um, and obviously interface with issues that impact their local community or the state community, depending on the race. But in terms of running for office and getting the ball rolling, the sooner the better, because we don't really have a lot of money, but well, we do have time, and everybody has the same 24 hours in a day. So it really is incumbent upon us to get the ball rolling as soon as possible. So to give you an idea, to file to run for governor is $3,750 is the filing fee, or 5,000 petition signatures. And those 5,000 signatures have to be collected on paper. And if you sign a petition for to get a candidate on the ballot, you cannot participate in the primary or convention of another party. So if you're signing a green candidate petition, that means that you cannot participate in the Democrat or Republican primary or the Libertarian convention. So the law kind of um, it boxes people in, so to speak. That could also just be an opportunity to tell people, well, we have our own Green Party nominating process. So if you're willing to sign this petition for a Green candidate to get on the ballot, then you should also be voting to nominate them in the Green Party convention. In practice, most people do not vote in the party primaries. Most voters do not affiliate with any party. But there's a whole conversation educating voters about their options, et cetera, et cetera.
What I keep coming back to is um, we're up against really all of the forces of capitalism and imperialism in a very direct sense. And so the fight that we're fighting here, given the Green Party platform and the policies as ambitious as they are, it's it'll be long no matter what. Um, and I think that kind of goes back to kind of focusing on the local movements and the small wins that we can make beyond electoral politics and in fighting that fight.
A message of how do we break the duopoly? Like, and I think one of the reasons that Bernie Sanders was able to garner so much traction in 2016 was because he started a momentum of not taking corporate money or not taking PAC money, but the Green Party isn't really capitalizing on that message. I don't think people really know that we don't take corporate money, that we don't take PAC money, that we don't take lobby money. And so that would be like a good messaging strategy to be talking about now. Like, are you tired of the duopoly? Well, so are we. We don't take any corporate money, like that kind of like put those on banner drops.
We needed to get 2% or better in a statewide campaign here in Texas to extend our ballot access for 5 more election cycles, meaning 10 more years. So Eddie and I were a team for this election, and I'm really proud of what we were able to accomplish. Julian's hands up. Go ahead.
Yeah, on this point, I just wanted to mention the fact that, and Ali, you've already said this, but, we were able to get this result for Eddie having basically no money, no media coverage. Eddie was the only candidate in the race who did not accept any donations from the fossil fuel industry. Okay, all three of the other candidates actually work in the industry and accepted political donations from the industry. And we have to remember this is Texas. Like this is the one of, I mean, it's the biggest oil and gas producing state in the country, and we're also the biggest emitter of climate pollution. So for Eddie in Texas to get this result is not anything to kind of wag your finger at. Like this is actually a very big accomplishment that we have over 300,000 voters who chose Eddie, and he was a candidate who was explicitly running on ending the fossil fuel industry, doing what we need to save the planet, from catastrophic climate change, engaging in a just transition away from fossil fuels to 100% renewable energy. So, I mean, this is like a huge result again, especially in the context of us being in Texas. So, it's important to recognize that, because those of us who are in the majority who want to save the planet, we need to find each other, and having candidates like Eddie on the ballot are ways for us to see that we're out there, not to say that people who voted for the other candidates don't care, right? But it's like our vote is our voice, and this is how we say we wholeheartedly believe in what candidates like Eddie are bringing forth in their campaign. So it's really encouraging, and tell people about this and say, like, look, it's possible to have a green, eco-socialist, climate ally, climate friendly candidate on the ballot, and they can get hundreds of thousands of votes, and we're going to build on that.
I want to talk next about Robin Lee Vargas and her campaign for State Senate District 27. Now, to me, this was another big accomplishment, another good thing that was done by our party. And I want to talk for just a minute about the incumbent in this race, Morgan Lamantia. She's not an advocate for the people. She's an advocate for her family business and their beer distributorship. So, so that said, knowing that situation, the Green Party sponsored Robin Lee Vargas as a candidate in South Texas for this state Senate district. And if you look at the numbers, the Republican challenger got 49.4%. The incumbent that I just described to you got 48.3%. And our Green Party candidate, Robin Lee Vargas, got 2.3%. So there's different terms for this type of election, but I'm going to say that Robin was an influencer, and the Green Party had influence in this election. And I think that we should be proud of the fact that in this narrow election, there's a chance, who knows, maybe the people that voted for Robin are new voters who would not have voted otherwise. That's possible, and that's often the case for Green Party supporters. They feel that they would rather not vote for Democrats and Republicans and would choose not to vote if there was not a third party option. But in the hypothetical scenario that some of Robin's voters would have otherwise voted for Morgan Lamantia, I say we welcome that analysis. We're proud of that possibility, and we're glad to have a significant influence if that were the case in this election. And I just want to point out that this type of scenario where the Green Party can play an influencing effect in an election is a win that we can have as we build power towards the future. So a lot of people say, well, you can't win, you don't have money, you don't have widespread support. What's the point? Why bother? Well, this election is an example of how I believe it's likely that we had influence in this election and changed the outcome of this election. Julian's hands up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on that. So As someone who also ran for the state legislature, I ran in 2020 for Senate District 26 here in San Antonio. Um, it's extremely important for Green candidates to bring, their message to these races for legislature. Obviously, there's a criticism that we saw again this election that, oh, well, Greens don't build locally and they don't run local and they don't run blah blah blah. That's totally false. Here locally in Texas, we've had a more difficult time over the past few years because of the imposition of filing fees. So that has suppressed people who want to run for office but can't afford like the hundreds or thousands of dollars in filing fees, and might have difficulty collecting like the hundreds of signatures that you need. But
Or
we still,
thousands of signatures.
but
Yeah.
or thousands, yeah, for statewide. Um, but it's we still have candidates like Robin and Hunter as well, who ran for these district races. And so it's extremely important, for the next cycle that we uh, support candidates who want to run for these local races, right? It's that they're not going to help us get the ballot access the way that Eddie's statewide race was able to do, but it's extremely important because again, like someone like Robin, who started out as like a local activist in her community and then decided to run for office and brings to light all of these issues, whether it's environmental issues, whether it's Palestine, whether it's the corruption in the legislature that Ali mentioned. A lot of folks don't know that the legislature, candidates and office holders for the legislature can raise unlimited amounts of political contributions, and there's basically no restrictions on expenditures except that you cannot buy real estate. Okay, so there's a huge amount of corruption, right? And then you add on top of that the PACs and the super PACs and the secret money, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a huge blind spot in our politics because both parties have carved up the state in a way that suppresses uh, competition on the ballot. So, 33% of the Senate races that were up for election at this time were unopposed, and 36% of Texas House seats in this election were unopposed. And then if you look at the seats that actually had two candidates, the vast majority are incumbents that won with overwhelming margins. And Robin's race was the only one of 15 Senate races that was, quote, competitive, in that it had three candidates. And so, yeah, people might say, oh, well, Robin was a spoiler because that 2.3%, blah, blah, blah. No, like she gave voice to folks who had specific concerns about both candidates from major parties, and she earned those votes. And like Ali said, right, if you believe the logic that these votes were a spoiler effect, well, then it's incumbent on the the candidates to earn those votes and to earn enough votes to get a majority. And so actually, this is the only race that is going to a runoff. I don't think there's no other.
Actually, the judgeships are an interesting situation here in Texas. As the Green Party, we do have to have statewide candidates get 2% or better to extend our ballot access. We achieved that goal this cycle with Eddie Espinosa. And I want to point out that the Libertarians ran a judge for the Texas Supreme Court who got 3.3%. I did not see this person campaigning anywhere. I did not see their name. I think, in the chat, somebody correct me if they shook hands with David Roberson or saw an ad for David Roberson. I don't think that happened. I think what happens is in the judgeship positions, people maybe feel a little bit more free to vote as a protest or to vote for a third party. And so I think the Libertarians did a good strategy here, running in the Supreme Court position. And I think with very little, if any, campaigning, they were able to get well over 2% with this 3.3% percent result. So I would just want to point out there's about 5 statewide judges that will be 5 or 6 statewide judges that will be on the ballot in 2026, and my desire is to recruit at least 1 or 2 Green Party judge candidates, and of course that means those people will need to be lawyers in good standing with the Texas bar, and there's some other requirements. But please, everyone, have that in mind. We would like green affiliated or green friendly lawyers to run for these statewide judge positions. And it could be a great platform for them to speak about civil rights and many other issues. And so for the right person, I think it would be a good opportunity. 4 Republicans and 2 Democrats who ran unopposed. So I think right there is an opportunity looking forward, particularly to run against the Republicans, to make sure that there is a left opposition in those districts where the Democrats were not able to run or chose not to run a candidate. I think there's an opportunity there. And one of those districts is Texas 25, Roger Williams in the Arlington-Fort Worth area. So I think we definitely want to take a close look at that district. But you can see that the majority the races were won in that range of 60 to 69%. The reason that the vote totals are so predictable for so many of these races is because of districting, or some might call it gerrymandering, meaning the districts are drawn in such a way that it's almost preordained. It's either a Democratic safe district or a Republican safe district, and at the state legislature, they cut those deals in back rooms to decide who's going to have what area, who gets what, who's going to win what. And it's a very undemocratic process that both the Republicans and the Democrats, big D Democrats, involve themselves in. So as far as the Green Party, where do we have opportunities as a third party? Well, I would argue in those races that are closer, that where the margin of victory for the person who just won in this election cycle is smallest, that's where we might have a good opportunity to run and have an influence in the election. And I'll just point out that the 2 closest districts by far are in South Texas, where we already have activists on the ground. One is Vicente Gonzalez in Brownsville, a candidate that I'm very familiar with and who has a very poor track record. I'll point out right now, he's taken over $200,000 from AIPAC. He is also sold out to the oil and gas industry. Pretty much any unsavory or immoral money fundraising source, he's taken money. Henry Cuellar is another one, over $225,000 from AIPAC. And I believe he's currently under investigation. So I don't know if he's going to last this term, 2 more years, but he was just reelected. I also want to point out that the vast majority of both Democrats and Republicans in Texas were AIPAC endorsed. So if I start here, at 30 of the 38 were AIPAC endorsed. We have a handful, mostly Democrats and 1 Republican, Chip Roy, who were not AIPAC endorsed, and then only 1 in the entire Texas congressional delegation was endorsed by TrackAIPAC.com, and they're a independent watchdog group that's I believe quite reliable. So my intention is to reach out to these non-endorsed, non-AIPAC candidates, thank them for the stand that they've taken, and to suggest that if the pressure ever gets too much, or if the party politics is ever too much, they might want to consider joining the Green Party.
One key to organizing locally is local issue advocacy. So, this is something that we've done in Bexar County in the San Antonio area. We've seen folks in the Valley do this. Obviously, recently, all of this stuff going on in Dallas and Houston. to not only support the campaign, but also to get people out to the demonstrations like for Palestine. All of those are examples of how Greens can support and interface with other activists in their local areas, and that is key not only to strengthening, our organizations, but also solidarity and building networks of support with other groups, and obviously on issues that we align with, that align with our values as Greens and our values as human beings. Here locally in San Antonio, like we have folks who do climate justice work. One of our longtime activists, Antonio Diaz, who is on the call, he's an indigenous activist, and he's been organizing around indigenous rights and decolonization for a very long time. And so it's that type of stuff that we want to be active and be visible and support those causes, not only because it's a great thing to do, but also, again, like I said, because it creates those networks, and shows solidarity, because we a lot of our work is focused on elections, but that dovetails with the issues that we care about, because ultimately we want to see the change, we want to be the change, and we can bring these issues to the ballot, like when we run for office, and then in off years, we want to do that organizing as well in order to build momentum to affect the change that we want locally. Oil and gas in particular basically controls both parties, both sides of the aisle. And, there are other interests involved as well, like the insurance industry is a big lobbying group, the private prison industry, the bail bonds industry, the real estate industry, so this is what we have to deal with every legislative session, that, there are these ghouls that are trying to, get their legislature to the legislature that they've bought and paid for, get them to pass the laws that are favorable to their profit seeking and rent seeking and general, destruction of communities and the planet. That sounds dire, but we have to be real about what we're dealing with when it comes to the legislature. Now, that being said, there are quote unquote good things that can come out of the legislature, especially when people get together to fight the bad things, but also to advocate for the good things. And so we need people to be active, to know what the legislature is doing. For us as Greens, we also want to be visible and, say these are the issues that we care about. These are the bills that we want to see. As far as getting laws like proposed, like filing bills, it's more complicated because that requires like interfacing with your representative or your senator, and a lot of the times they have their own ideas about what bills they want to file, and the public in general does not, ironically, even though there are representatives, it's very hard in practice for us to actually get ideas that come from the people onto paper in the legislature and get those ideas out there. And so if you have ideas on, interfacing with the legislature, if you maybe in past years have contacted your representative or your state senator, let's definitely talk and work on that. As Greens, there are the issues that are that we're fighting for, whether it's climate justice, social justice, housing, things like that. But there's also the stuff that nobody else cares about except us, which is opening the ballot, grassroots democracy, getting money out of politics, anti-corruption, etc. We actually have way more momentum right now than I have certainly seen in 7 years of being active in the Green Party. I mean, our society in general is becoming way more right wing. We're seeing fascism at every turn, And so, you know, we cannot be hopeless. We have to continue. We have to continue fighting. And you know, the biggest problem that we face is that people are not so there's a huge lack of political education, which leads to a lack of political engagement. So people are alienated from the system, and that's by design, right? And so it's like, you know, we may not be feeling that we have made a difference because, you know, we haven't won a statewide office or Congress or legislature, whatever. Um, in a lot of respects, just continuing to survive is to fight another day is part of the victory. It doesn't feel as satisfying as saying, yeah, you know, we won or whatever. But we would not be here today if it weren't for people like yourself, Antonio, you know, running for Congress. Antonio ran for mayor a few times of San Antonio, bringing those issues out there and, you know, being visible. That is there's no substitute for that. And, you know, we had so many folks all over the state doing that. And we're, you know, we may be few people, but if we weren't there, you know, it would be non-existent, right? I mean, here in San Antonio, which is like always Democrat, you know, people always voting majority Democrat. I mean, in my neighborhood, there was not a single person with a political sign. There was not a single door knocker who came for, you know, any campaign. I think I maybe saw one person a couple blocks away had a Harris sign, right? Most people are kind of disengaged, and that's not a judgment against them, but they're alienated, and so our goal should be to reach out to folks who have been left behind, who feel that, you know, that the system has abandoned them. And it's a difficult conversation to have, but, you know, Antonio, like you said, having those conversations face to face is really key. And, you know, there are always going to be attacks, like, you know, the people who say that we only show up every 4 years are the ones who faithfully attack us every 4 years, and, you know, they disappear, right?
The stars at night are big and bright. Deep in the heart of Texas.